Hello, in this lecture you learn a bit about the stored procedures. Now, stored procedures are these little pieces of code that you can store in the database, and then you would use them whenever you need to use them. So you could have insertion procedures, retrieval procedures, and all kinds of procedures simply stored in the database, and then you could access them through various different programming languages, and you simply call on them, you pass on the variables, and something nice happens. So let's go to our test table now. Test table 1, test database 1 actually, and then let's go to the programmability right here. You expand that, and then you see several folders, and we need to find the one called stored procedures. So you right click on that, and you go to new, and then you go to stored procedure. And then this new template will open up. Now you have these various lines of code here. Some of them you need, some of them you do not. So what I would suggest doing is you skip everything until the create procedure part. You don't delete it, you don't modify it, you don't do nothing to it. Now in the create procedure you have these little things listed. Basically, they give you examples of the stuff that you could put in there. Now, we do not need those examples here. So let's delete all that. And you leave create procedure as. So create procedure, then followed by name of the procedure. So let's say get test data. Now you could name it whatever you want it to be named. However, I would suggest using this naming system where the first word actually suggests what the procedure is supposed to do. So get for retrieving, or you could write retrieve, it doesn't really matter. And then if you're going to write a procedure that will update something, you write update and then underscore the name of that procedure. This is done because the procedures are listed in a plain list. So if you have 2 or 3 of them, you will be able to separate them finally. However, if you have 200 procedures, it will be quite difficult to look for them. So having a good naming system is very important. Now moving forward, you need to assign the variables. So there are many ways to do that, but what you need actually, you need to retrieve those variables through that programming language. So in the actual program, you will need to pass them through. And to do that, you need to declare variables between the create procedure and the name of it, and the word as. So right here you will be declaring your variables that will be passed through to the procedure. If you only need the variable in the procedure, you can declare it in the begin and statement here. So let's declare a little perhaps search procedure. So let's do at, and let's call it decimal filter, because we will try to filter the decimal values. So as you can see, the name of the variable starts with the at sign. It will always start with the at sign. Now afterwards you need to declare the type for the variable, the type. So to do that, you simply write decimal, in this case of course decimal, and then we had 18 we had, and then 2, 18 and 2 we had. Now if you wanted to have another one, you simply separate it like that, and you could actually just copy it and do name 2, let's say, and you have your 2 variables. And if you need more, you do the same thing, but we will only be using 1 variable this time. So let's delete all that, and now we can move on. So after the as, you have this begin and end, and then later you have go, but you do not need to worry about that, just leave it there. So you have begin and end, and in the middle of it you will have your actual statement, your actual code that does the actual work. So let's delete all of that. Let's delete the select. Now you can leave the set no count. This will allow you to receive only 1 value if you need that. You will see the difference between retrieving only 1 value and several values a bit later when we get to the actual programming languages. But for now, I would just say that it will allow for only 1 value. Now normally you could have only 1 value as well, but if for some reason there are results that would give you several values, you would retrieve all of them. If you set no count on, you will retrieve only 1 of them. And it is actually described in a very similar way in these comments. Now one thing to note here, as you can see, you have these 2 little characters, and those 2 make up a comment in SQL. So we can leave all that, and now let's do a simple select. Let's do select, and let's see, let's do from our test table we had. As you can see, I don't even need to go to the table to look at the values. I just have everything suggested here. So I have test table, and let's try to retrieve the value. So let's do text or test text actually. Yes, so we had text test we had. So let's retrieve the text. Let's retrieve just this 1 value. Now in this case we will actually be retrieving a bigger set of values. So let's leave it at that for now, and then let's do a little where statement. So let's do where, and let's do something a bit more interesting this time. Let's do, say for example, where, let's do the deck test is less than the decimal filter value. So as you can see, you can have that kind of a logic as well, more, less, more, equal. So you can have all that just as well as you would do equals. So now you will retrieve all of the values for the text test, values from the test table. And once you call on this procedure, you will pass through this variable. This variable will be checked like that, and the select statement will return. It will return. Now, one thing to note is that this select statement is the only statement that will kind of return you a value. Now, there are actually other ways to do it. There is an output statement, but we will look at that a bit later when we get to the actual languages. So now we have this procedure built, ready to be executed. So you execute it, and as you can see, commands completed successfully. And now you will have a procedure and you will be able to access it from various different programming languages, from various different programs. And with that, we will conclude this lecture.